Hello. So today we are making a beef stew that goes in the crock pot, and this recipe is delicious. It's tried and true. My family loves it. It's been passed down from family member to family member. I have no idea where it started, but first I'm going to run through the ingredients with you. I have a shoulder roast here. You could use any type of roast. You could use a sirloin roast, a chuck roast, whatever you have. This roast happens to be 2 pounds, 12 ounces. So you're looking for a roast between, excuse me, 2.5 and 3 pounds. Then you're also going to need potatoes. Sometimes I use red potatoes because I don't have to peel them. I can just wash them and cut them up, and that's easy and fun. But today I have just some regular potatoes that I will peel. You'll also need carrots. You could use baby carrots, or you can use regular carrots that you wash, peel, and cut up. I prefer to use baby carrots because ease and nice and quick and easy. Don't have to wash them, they're ready to go. You'll also need 1 onion and approximately a pound of frozen peas. You'll need a little pepper and a little salt. And this is the secret ingredient, classic Catalina Kraft Salad Dressing. Now I have made this many times, and I like store brand ingredients. However, I have never tried this recipe with anything but Kraft Catalina. I'm afraid. Most of the time store brand is excellent, but there are those occasional times when it's not, and I just know that this is really good and works perfectly. So that's what I use. And just a little regular flour. You're also going to need, of course, a crock pot or a slow cooker and a little bit of water. So this is a no fuss type of recipe. It's going to cook in the crock pot on low for 8 to 10 hours. You don't really have to fuss with it. It's not one of those recipes where you have to stir it every 2 hours. If I'm home, I give this 1 stir in the middle of the cook time. If I'm not home, I don't. So it's that simple. It's not going to affect the outcome. So fear not. Now my roast is partially frozen, partially thawed. I like cutting beef that way. You can use a fresh roast, you can use frozen roast, you can thaw it out a little bit in the microwave. My roast, I thawed overnight in the freezer. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's frozen, partially frozen, or fresh. You can even buy stew meat cut up in cubes already. Save yourself another step. But chopping it up to me isn't a big deal. Now, it is going to kind of break down from the size of chunks you do. As it's cooking, this meat is going to become very tender, kind of fall apart as you eat it. You might notice here, there's a little bit of excess fat on this. I'm just going to pull that off. You want a little fat in your roast. A little bit of marbling, that's what they call it. But you don't want a roast that's like a ton of fat. And when there's these huge chunks of fat, if I can eliminate them, I do. Okay, so this is your base layer in the crock pot. You just throw it in. Some people like to spray their crock pot. This recipe, I don't do that with because it's kind of liquidy to begin with. So I'm going to continue cutting this up, and then I will be right back. Ta-da! Looky there. That is our roast cut up and ready to go. It's the base layer in the crock pot. Next, we're going to add the onion. And while I cut this onion up, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about this recipe. Before I get too carried away though, let me just make a little disclaimer here. This is my first ever YouTube recipe, and I'm sure I'm making some absolutely epic fails, so please forgive me. But what is not an epic fail is this recipe. This recipe I have been making personally for about 20 years. It is absolutely delicious. People absolutely love it. It's fantastic for a working mom or a day you don't have time to fuss around. Or, you know, you want a real tender, delicious stew. To be honest with you, this is the only stew I have ever made. I've never made oven version of stew. And I just don't even have a desire to try other stews because this one just checks all the boxes for us. Now, I'm chopping this onion up, and I chop the onion very fine because I have some children who are quite opposed to onion. They know that onion is in just about everything, and they don't mind that, but they don't really want to experience chunks of onion. So I dice it small for just about everything. So we're just putting in one onion. Now sometimes when I make this recipe, and in previous years in my life, I have even put this together in the evening and then put the whole crock pot in the fridge, and then in the morning, while I'm busy, I'm rushing out the door, I just stick it on, you know, on the crock pot base, and I put on low. And then when I would come home from work, I don't know exactly what time, 3:30, 4, 5, whenever, I would move on with the other step. This recipe is going to take 8 to 10 hours on low. Please excuse the squealing infant. It's going to take 8 to 10 hours on low. And the last hour, you will need to do something the hour before it's finished. And I will explain that in greater detail in a moment. Now, next layer is going to be our potatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and wash these up, chop them down, peel them because I'm not using reds. I don't peel red potatoes, and that is another time-saving step. Love red potatoes, love them. But today, I just have some regular white, all-purpose white potatoes. I'm going to wash them, I'm going to peel them, I'm going to cut them into cubes. I'm going to give this little girl something to help her be content, or I'm going to let her get over singing out, one of the two. And then I will be back, and we will put our layer of potatoes in the crock pot. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that as I'm chopping these potatoes up, the pieces that you're cutting, and they don't have to be exactly uniform. My mindset as I'm cutting my vegetables for a stew, or for this stew, I I think bite size. Like you don't want that to cut things up. You want it to just kind of fit on the spoon as you're eating it. So if you were cutting carrots for this recipe, you'd want to make sure that they're like bite size, they fit on the spoon. Same with the potatoes. It's not an exact science, but I thought I'd just mention that. The potatoes are not going to break down like the beef is. At least we don't want that to happen. So the beef is going to, get into smaller pieces, but the potatoes should stay about the same. Okay, so we now have our layer of potatoes. So we have the layer of beef, the onion, and now the potatoes. And now to this, we are going to add our carrots. So you want to add roughly a pound of carrots. And I'm probably not mentioning exact ingredients as I'm doing some of this. That will all be in the description of the video for sure. Potatoes, approximately 2.5 pounds. With potatoes, you can never be exact because some are, bigger than others, and it's hard to do exact. So I had a 2-pound bag of carrots, baby carrots. I'm putting roughly half of it in, which would be a pound. And there's our next layer. Now, the peas and the flour we will not use right now. That's gonna come in the last hour of cooking that I talked to you about earlier. So right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna season this with some salt and pepper. Now, you could choose to not add salt and pepper. This is kind of an optional ingredient. I put a little bit of salt. I know that there is salt in the dressing that we use. I put a good bit of pepper. So it's up to you. I'd say that roughly I used about 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, probably maybe 1/4 a teaspoon of pepper. I've made this so many times that I have stopped measuring exactly. And sometimes I adjust this larger. If I have a larger roast, sometimes I adjust it smaller. I have a large family, so, and the leftovers of this stew are absolutely fantastic. It's delicious the next day. And as I've said, everybody is a big fan of it either way. So now we've got the salt and pepper on here. Next, we're going to add our dressing. We are going to put one and a half cups of Catalina dressing. So this is 1 cup. I'm going to add in again, no science to it. You don't have to mix it. You don't have to make sure it's spread evenly. I do drizzle it around a little. Okay, so that's 1 cup in. We're going to put another half. Another thing I want to mention about the roast, which I'm not sure I mentioned earlier. Get what's on sale. Use what you have. You don't need the most expensive roast. The way that this is cooking, it's going to cook up delicious. I have used all types. I just happened to be using a shoulder roast today because it's what I pulled out of my freezer. It didn't have a bone. I prefer to not use a roast with a bone for this recipe because then you'd have to fish the bone out or cut around the bone, and for this recipe it's just not really necessary. Okay, so that's 1.5 cups of Catalina. Now we're going to add equal parts of water. So 1.5 cups of water we're going to add. So here's 1 cup. I'm just pouring it over top. And there's the 1/2 cup. So 1.5 cups. Now, what I talked about earlier, sometimes I get this all ready and I put it in the crock pot at night. And then the morning before, I plug it in and let it go. This is how I would prep it. I would prep it to this stage. Now today, it's morning here at my house, 8:45. I'm going to put this on. In about 4 hours, I'm going to show you all what it looks like, and we're going to give it a stir. It's not necessary to stir it at the 4-hour mark, but since I'm home and I want you to see what it should be looking like at the 4-hour mark, I will stir it and show you then. Then 1 hour before completion, we will do some other additional items to this stew. So I'll see you in 4 hours. All right, time warp, fast forward 4 hours. And you can see things are nice and bubbly here in my crock pot. Take the lid off so you can see. We're just starting to really bubble good around the edges. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it a stir. As I told you before, this is not necessary. You do not need to do this. And you can also see that there is a lot more liquid than there was when we started. That's because the meat is giving off its liquids and the onion is giving its liquids and everything is just simmering. You notice the potatoes have a tinge of red on them, and that's from the Catalina. And you can see the liquid that we have now. It's a good blend of, you know, everything just kind of mixed itself together. But those potatoes with that red, you won't notice them in a few more hours. And that won't be noticeable. So fear not. Okay, I'm just gonna, just a light stir just to show you what it looks like. Things are still, they're not nearly done. Okay. In another 4 hours, it's gonna look a lot different. And so I'm gonna go for about a 9-hour cook time today because that's what's gonna work perfect with my dinner this evening. So we're gonna come back in 4 hours and then we will do, that will be a total of 8 hours in the crock pot on low. We will add our additional ingredients, do what we need to do, and then we will make an adjustment and cook 1 more hour. Okay, we are at the end of our 8-hour slow cooking time, and you can see it's really bubbling here. Woo! Steam effect on the camera. Look at that. Lots of liquid. Now we're going to use the flour and the peas that I was talking about earlier. So you're going to use 3 tablespoons of flour, and you're just going to dust it over the top, like so. And the reason you want to dust it is to help with the incorporating in process. That's 2. Woo! I just spilled some flour. All right, that's 2 and a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to stir it good. Incorporate all this in. look, you can see things are starting to look really done. And let me tell you what, it smells really yummy. And as you can see, there's lots of liquid. Now, mixed in there pretty good. Okay. Now, we're going to add those peas we were talking about that we were reserving. I'm going to add approximately a pound of peas. Those lump. And you're just going to kind of mix them in. Now mine happen to be frozen in a lump here because I'm using a bag that I used in the past. No big deal. You know what? They'll be fine. Now the peas go in the last hour so that they remain that great crisp green color. They don't get all soggy. You know, they stay how a pea should be. And these are breaking up pretty nice. Now the final thing we're going to do for this last hour is we are going to turn the temperature up to high. Okay, that's going to help the peas cook. It's going to help the flour cook so that it thickens our stew. Okay, so I'm going to adjust the setting from low to high. I'm going to put the lid back on, and in an hour we will come back and we will serve this up. Okay, so we're back after our 1 hour on high. As you can see, the look has changed of our stew. It is thickened, it is complete. The peas are still great, beautiful. So just as a reminder, we did 8 hours on low, 1 hour on high for a total of 9 hours cooking. I'm going to give it one more stir. Final stir. We've got the meat starting to fall apart now. As we talked about in the beginning, it is just yum. Now, get that, isn't it? Looks great. It tastes great too. Now, serving ideas. You could just have this stew by itself. You can have biscuits with it. You could have a side salad. Maybe you just want to do a little bit of fruit, maybe some applesauce or something. It's up to you. Could be dinner, could be lunch. Leftovers are fantastic. So I hope you all enjoy this. As I said, please see the recipe details in the video details. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. Let me know how it goes. I hope that this becomes a family favorite for you as well. And also, please subscribe. I will be posting some more tried and true recipes. I don't know what else I might get into, but I can assure you that there will be more recipes. Thanks for watching. Bye.